Hello, this is Susan Marie, and welcome to The Human Condition, a conversation with you based upon everyday observations that all of us experience made simple. You can catch these on iTunes, SoundCloud, Google Play Music, YouTube, and by subscribing to my newsletter, suemarie.substack.com. Most things I speak of are linked for further study in the data section of the show. Today, I wish to speak with you about human nature, humanism, and the corruption of morality. When you break apart the extensiveness of what human nature is comprised of characteristics like thinking, feeling, and acting naturally. This is the essence of being human. These characteristics are influenced by personal ethics, philosophies, beliefs, how we critically and rationally think, our life experiences, our trauma and healing, how we value or devalue dogma, superstition, history, and mythology. And all of these characteristics ultimately define how we behave. Morality is to have a sense of what is right, good, and truthful, based on an implied common standard or from within yourself. And corruption is dishonest and untrustworthy conduct. However, a morally corrupt person is someone who justifies an act that is negative to be positive in their mind. Moral corruption can be something as harmless as stealing a candy bar with the justification that big corporations make millions of dollars by stealing from the poor, therefore stealing from them is okay. And it can be far worse, such as someone who believes manipulating and ruining other people's lives is okay because they are superior to others. Humanism is a philosophical and ethical belief that focuses on the value and behavior of human beings individually and collectively that requires critical thinking such as rationalism. An example of humanism is having scientific proof for the creation of humankind rather than a solely dogmatic view. This does not discount any belief system, rather prefers critical thinking and evidence to opinion without proof. Humanism is about one's responsibility for and continuous development of self with concern for humankind in relation to the entire world. Humanists such as Carl Sagan believe that humanity must seek truth through reason and evidence, while at the same time be scientifically skeptical. The idea is to engage with what is human with the goal to progress the human race, to help it flourish, to make life better for everyone, and to be the most conscious species and have concern for the welfare for all beings, not just some, as well as concern for the planet. And in psychology, there are numerous examples of humanism where the approach is about an individual's drive towards self-actualization and creativity. So what is self-actualization? Maslow introduced his concept of a hierarchy of needs in his 1943 paper, A Theory of Human Motivation, and his book, Motivation and Personality. This hierarchy suggests that people are motivated to fulfill basic needs before moving on to more advanced needs, level by level. This hierarchy is 5 levels of needs in single layers, or if you can picture a triangle. And starting first at the bottom, with physiological needs like food, water, breathing, sleep, shelter, and clothing, you move on to safety, which is health and wellness, shelter, money, and being and feeling safe from disaster. To the third level, social needs like friends, romance, relation, family, social groups. On to self-esteem, which is accomplishment, personal worth, boundaries, self-respect. To the last level, self-actualization, which is self-awareness and achieving the ultimate potential as a human being. How the levels operate depend on if the needs in one level are fully met. And if they are not met, it will be more difficult for a human being to move on to the next level of fulfillment. Some people do not have food, water, and clothing, which are basic, while others do. Some have love and family, and others do not. In turn, some of us do not have high self-esteem and personal goal setting, and some of us are not financially well off, while some of us are. Why do I mention this hierarchy? Because it is a useful tool to measure why one may behave the way they do. And the best representation of the hierarchy is similar to a video game, how you get from one level to the next. This is how the hierarchy of needs works. And the levels focus away from a purely broad, abnormal viewpoint on development to what is realistically required for the development of one healthy individual. Keeping the hierarchy in mind, Philosophers have been debating human nature for centuries, but in an era of increasing political vitriol, the issues at stake are gaining new relevance. To understand what we should expect from our leaders, we must first consider what to expect of ourselves. Massimo Pigliucci, professor of philosophy at the City College of New York, defined human nature as the representation of the very foundation for morality. His view implies if our understanding of human nature was incomplete, then our moral judgments would be incomplete. In this aspect, our moral judgments must include all of humanity instead of only our opinions and personal beliefs that can cause our moral judgments to be incorrect due to being based only on our own personal traits. Even when we think we know what our values are, we must have a command of human nature. The Center for Humans and Nature published an article, Humans, Nature, and Ethics, that presents the ethic of giftedness, and that losing the ethic of giftedness would undermine three key features of our moral landscape: humility, responsibility, and solidarity. However, the existence of a fixed human nature and the malleability of man has been argued by modernists such as Rousseau when he wrote, "We do not know what our nature permits us to be." And since the 19th century, thinkers such as Marx, Kierkegaard, and Nietzsche have sometimes argued against a fixed or innate human nature. According to Aristotle, human nature originated with Socrates, who turned philosophy from a study of the heavens to a study of human beings. Socrates studied the question of how a person should best live, and it is clear from the works of his student Plato that Socrates was a rationalist and believed that the best life and the life most suited to human nature involved reasoning. The Socratic school was the dominant surviving influence in philosophical discussion in the Middle Ages among Islamic, Christian, and Jewish philosophers. Aristotle, Plato's student, made some of the most famous and influential statements about human nature. 1. That humans are animalistic in nature, meaning born to couple with other adults, to procreate, to make love. 2. That humans are political animals, meaning an animal with the urge to develop more complex communities with divisions of labor and lawmaking. And 3. That humans love to use imagination. For Aristotle, reason is not only what is most special about humanity compared to other animals, but it is also what we were meant to achieve at our best. Aristotle developed the standard presentation of this approach with his theory of four causes, where every living thing exhibits four aspects or causes, which are matter, form, effect, and end. For example, an oak tree is made of plant cells, which is matter, that grew from an acorn, which is effect, which exhibits the nature of oak trees, form, and grows into a fully mature oak tree, end. Human nature is an example of a formal cause. To become a fully actualized human being, including fully actualizing the mind, is our end, just like the oak tree, which is what Maslow's hierarchy of needs is all about. Which brings me to moral insanity, a medical theory of the corruption of human nature by H.F. Augustine that outlines insanity in human nature itself, where instead of insanity being observed as a delusional state, humans display behaviors like sullenness, fury, shamelessness, and criminal behavior, but without clear motivation or purpose. To explain this moral insanity, it accounts for humankind's political and religious views during the rise of capitalist society in Britain in the 18th century. Moral insanity referred to a derangement of mental faculties that presided over humans' own emotional framework, meaning the focus on what is external rather than internal took over. Patrick Lee, professor of philosophy at the Franciscan University of Steubenville, wrote of human nature and moral goodness, which is when, if a pattern of action is the same as the pattern found in human nature, then the action is morally permissible. And if the action does not conform to human nature, then it is morally wrong. In that, free will is raised, meaning we choose among possibilities that are open to us. For example, I chose to forgive someone dear to me that did not initially nor immediately apologize to me for the behavior towards me this week. Yet when they did apologize a day later, I forgave them. Why did I do this? because I am not morally corrupt, because I understand human nature, because I am self-actualized? No. I made this choice because the action is of interest to me. What makes a course of action attractive, what makes it desirable and in some basic sense good, is that it is some way fulfilling for me or those that I care about. So each choice is a choice to realize or actualize one's potential. Human nature is the ground for what is morally good without being a limitation on free will. It's not as if morally good choices are those in line with nature and morally bad ones are not. More so, all choices realize our potential and develop our nature, and all choices are for the sake of something to which we have natural orientation towards. The difference between morally good choices and morally bad choices is not that morally bad choices aim at something bad, nor are choices morally good or bad and only in one's self-interest. Rather, as St. Augustine and St. Aquinas pointed out, the difference between morally good choices and morally bad ones is that the good choices are fully rational, while the bad ones are lacking in regards to aspects of human good that drives each of us towards self-actualization. Morality and nature are closely interrelated. Moral norms are grounded in human nature. However, morality directs us to human fulfillment, not just individual fulfillment, but fulfillment in communion with other people. Morality is based not on human nature viewed as a static pattern, but rather on basic good to which humans are naturally directed. Natural law need not be conceived as a set of limitations or as negative, and we are not all called to have the same life experiences, so there's room for immense diversity in living out the moral life. We are not all called to realize all the basic goods equally or in the same order. We are called to fashion a life in which we pursue, and natural law does not prescribe that human beings attempt to be carbon copies of one another. The moral attitude toward human nature is a kind of ideal one holds for the relationship between humans and nature, similar to how we view relationships between humans, how we are treated and how we treat others with warmth and generosity. This idealism does not suggest that something is right or wrong, permissible or impermissible. And for a person who holds a moral attitude towards human nature, they might think better of other people who demonstrate similar behaviors. And as a moral human, you might think it an important feature of the moral life, but at the same time, cannot expect everybody to behave this way, and must cease thinking that people who lack this idealism of moral human nature to the degree we perceive it are indeed immoral. They just do not live up to a standard we set for our own selves. Rob Bresney stated, "I regard relationship as a crucible for spiritual work. I think of the practical expression of kindness and compassion and ethical behavior as an essential spiritual practice. I assume that a crucial element of spiritual practice is the consciousness and compassion we bring to the sometimes chaotic and messy details of being human. I proceed as if loving and caring for animals and plants and the earth is the test of our spiritual intentions. I regard play and fun and humor as not diversions from serious spiritual work, but rather being at the center of it." Please join me next week for more interesting discussions, and please subscribe, share, rate, and check out last week's episode on what is environmentalism.